Hello humans, I'm Yoshiller, and I'm not a reviewer. I never intend to be a reviewer, and while I edit for a fair number of people that do create video game reviews, I'm much more interested in capturing and archiving gameplay and creating guides. With all that in mind, I felt compelled to make this video, an impression-style review-esque video, because I've been enjoying Pokemon Legends ZA so much. At the time of me creating this video, the game was released on the Nintendo Switch family of systems just over a week ago, and, like it or not, I was essentially required to binge the game since I recently joined the guides and walkthroughs team over on IGN. But I gotta say, I've really been enjoying my time with this game, a lot more than I thought. Yeah, I figured I'd have fun with it, and I even thought that I'd probably like it more than the other Pokemon titles released on the Nintendo Switch, but I couldn't have possibly predicted that I'd wind up enjoying the game this much. Maybe it's recency bias, and maybe it's because I'm something of a Pokemon addict, but I don't know, man. The more I play this game, the more I like it. And full disclosure, I am playing the Switch 2 edition of this game, so maybe the overall experience is completely different than the base Switch 1 version of the game. Despite that, I'm enjoying the Switch 2 version of the game, and I haven't run into any issues. Quite the opposite, honestly. I've only had a great experience. It wouldn't even be a stretch to say that this may just be my new favorite Pokemon title. On the Switch, anyway. Gold, Silver, Heart Gold, and Soul Silver are going to be tough to beat, and even then, that could be the other end of the spectrum, nostalgia bias. But Legends ZA has repeatedly filled me with surprise and joy and has continued to keep a smile on my face while I play it. I'm really pleased with the results here, and there are many different things about this game that I can appreciate. As such, I thought I'd go ahead and share my appreciation for this game by gushing about it for the next half hour or so. I'm already well aware that my thoughts and sentiments probably won't be commonplace. The Pokemon Company has a lot working against them right now, and I totally understand why people are especially critical of them. Trust me, I get it. I know a lot of people didn't care for the plot of Pokemon Sword and Shield, the world of Pokemon Scarlet and Violet was laggy at times and visually inconsistent, the presentation of Pokemon Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl left a lot to be desired, and Pokemon Legends Arceus was a phenomenal game, if a little empty at times. Plus, if this Legend style of game just isn't someone's cup of tea, that's totally fair too. We have been getting an abundance of open world games as of late, and that can lead to the idea feeling a bit oversaturated in the gaming industry at the moment. So all in all, the Pokemon Company has a lot to live up to in order to create a game that can satisfy the majority of their consumers, especially since they've historically set the bar super high. And, for me at least, I'm happy to say that I am more than satisfied with Legends ZA. I'm not getting paid to say this, I'm not getting threatened to say this, I did not receive the game for free. These are my genuine, heartfelt thoughts. I absolutely adore Pokemon Legends ZA. And I already know what some of the main criticisms of this game are gonna be. Yes, the graphics look more akin to an upscaled Wii game. Yes, the actual exploration of the game is a bit basic. Yes, some things like the backgrounds in the distance look a bit unpolished. Yes, the game is locked to Lumiose City, so it's not as ambitious as some of Pokemon's predecessors, though I'd also argue that the smaller scope works in the game's favor. I'm not gonna sit here and be a defender of this game. I'm simply going to say, I'm having fun with this game, and I'm having more fun with it than I've had with any other Pokemon game in a long time. And I'm gonna explain why that is. Playing Pokemon Legends ZA helped remind me of the pure joy that is experiencing a Pokemon game for the first time. I'm not saying this didn't exist during the release of Pokemon Scarlet and Violet or any other Pokemon titles in recent times, but for me at least, this game recaptured that sense of joy and wonder. I think it's more so because I wasn't entirely certain what this game would contain. For better or for worse, the mainline Pokemon games have this formula where you go to gyms and collect badges, except in Sun and Moon where you go to trials and collect Z-Crystals, and fight an evil team, a rival, and usually a legendary Pokemon. And I'm totally fine with them relying on that formula. I like it. But that does also mean that I can generally expect what to get in a Pokemon game, and that's both a good and a bad thing. For Legends ZA, all I knew was that this game would act as a sequel to Pokemon Legends Arceus, but even then, I wasn't entirely sure what that would entail. I guess I figured that meant that I'd be able to run around and throw Pokeballs at Pokemon without having to actually battle them, and honestly, if that's all it was but set in a different region, I would have totally been content. But Legends ZA takes things in a different direction and establishes itself as a different entity than its predecessor, and the result is an experience that I enjoy so much more. I suppose if I were to give some sort of elevator pitch for Legends ZA, it would be that it's the gameplay of Pokemon Legends Arceus, but set in modern Kalos. And again, just that likely would have been fine with me, but that's all it would have been. Just fine. What I think genuinely works in Legends ZA's favor is simply those two ideas at the end of the sentence, modern and Kalos. See, Pokemon Legends Arceus being set in ancient Sinnoh, or Hisui as they called it back then, works in the game's favor and it helps validate the Legends word in the game's title. It was a neat idea to see an older, less developed version of this land and to see ancestors of many iconic characters. Of course, the core appeal of the game was its open world and contrasting gameplay style to the rest of the Pokemon series. The simple nature of being able to explore a vast landscape and catch or battle Pokemon in a different system, one where you technically didn't even have to have your own Pokemon, was the game's hook. So a sequel could have just been the same thing but in a different region, like Johto or Galar, but I am happy that the Pokemon Company didn't just do that. I mean, I'd be down for them to do so one day. I'd love to have another romp back through Johto especially, but I'm glad that they went in the direction that they did. Sinnoh was the prominent region in Pokemon Diamond and Pearl and Platinum and Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl, and its older variation was the prominent location in Pokemon Legends Arceus, whereas Kalos only ever appeared in Pokemon X and Y. We never had a sequel game to Pokemon X and Y, so as a result, Kalos is the only region to not be expanded upon in its own generation. Instead, we got remakes of Ruby and Sapphire and then jumped straight to Generation 7. So Kalos never really got a proper time to shine. Legends EA serves as both a sort of sequel to X and Y and a fresh take on the region. And I've wanted something like this for a long time now. I've wanted the Pokemon Company to become comfortable with the idea of having sequel stories to older regions. They don't always have to introduce new Pokemon or new forms of Pokemon. They already have such a cool established world that being able to go back to these places with a fresh coat of paint is already such a cool concept. It's part of the reason why I love Pokemon Gold and Silver and Heart Gold and Soul Silver. Being able to return to the Kanto region 2 years after the original Pokemon games is such a neat idea that they only ever did again in Pokemon Black 2 and White 2. And honestly, if the future of these Legends games is that their identity is being a Pokemon game where you get to re-explore a Pokemon region, but it's open world now, I'm totally down. It could be set in ancient times, or modern times, or even future times. But the idea of being able to go through a more realized version of Kalos' Lumiose City with a more modern set of Pokemon included is already such a cool idea. Plus, my favorite Pokemon, Bayleaf, is obtainable, so that's an extra win for me personally. The concept of being able to run through such a monolithic, monumental city with my Bayleaf was enough to put a smile on my face. And trust me, I had plenty of fun doing just that. But it wasn't enough to compel me to create a video on this game. It was that the more I played Legends EA, the more I found things to appreciate and the more I respected what the game was actually trying to pull off. The battle system in Legends EA, which is the core gameplay of the game, feels like a more realized version of what both Legends Arceus and Scarlet and Violet were trying to accomplish. It's a real-time battle system this time around that actually punishes and rewards players based on their proximity to their Pokemon on a map, and I think that that's neat. Now, I obviously still enjoy the turn-based battle system that the Pokemon series has always used, but I also hope that this real-time battle system sticks around for future Pokemon titles as well, or at least in the Legends games if nothing else. It's engaging, and it can add an extra layer of strategy. It also works well with the flow of the rest of the game. After all, the game is all about freedom, more or less, as you explore an enormous city in an open world and catch Pokemon as freely as you would in Legends Arceus, so being able to also freely move around in a battle and have that impact how the battle plays out is fairly novel. But beyond just the gameplay of a Pokemon game is also its characters and story. And this is a topic that's always kind of fluctuated in quality within the Pokemon games. What constitutes a good or a bad story is mostly subjective, but there are qualities of stories that are more often seen as well-written and better executed than some others. Historically, Pokemon game stories have always been okay. I'm one of those players that really enjoyed the stories of Pokemon Black and White as well as Pokemon Black 2 and White 2, but I wouldn't go as far as to call them the peak of fictional writing. Even so, with Pokemon entries that have had more straightforward or flat-out dull stories, I still enjoyed them. I was still fine if it was just a sequence of events that was dragging me along for the ride. To me, having a good story is something that I can appreciate, but it's not really a determining factor in whether or not I find a game to be good. It'd be different if the story was bad in a movie. After all, I'm playing a game versus only watching a movie. And I totally acknowledge that there are a lot of games that are basically interactive movies, and so I can understand why a bad plot would really ruin those games as well. But hey, if a game can have a nice story and nice characters, then to me, that's just a nice bonus. Fortunately, Legends EA does have nice characters and a nice story. Now, at first, I didn't really think I was going to enjoy the bulk of these characters. Sure, Pokemon games have always featured a colorful cast of characters with a handful of breakout stars, but they also have an abundance of bare bones, archetype-heavy, forgettable members too. When I first started playing Legends EA, I was kinda annoyed at some of the tropes that they were going for, and I was kinda rolling my eyes and reminding myself that, at the end of the day, I have to remind myself that this could be someone's first game and that I'm something of an outlier for having seen many of these tropes in the past. And I don't want to have to use the excuse that it's a kid's game, but it's a kid's game. So I had assumed that a lot of these characters would be fairly one note, but I was also mentally prepared for some of these characters to have some sort of twist as well, in an effort to make them multi-layered. But I was pleasantly surprised when I saw, as I played the game more, that these characters actually have some depth and charm to them. Color me surprised when I saw this one character, who aligns with every trope in the book of being this big bad antagonist, turn out to be one of the most understandable and debatably chillest characters in the whole game. I thought for sure that they were going to make him either stereotypically evil or one of those bad guys where you sympathize with his motives, but no, he's not even really a bad guy. Well, okay, he does a few shady things, but he's not malicious or unreasonable, like, at all. And actually, on that note, the game's whole system and the way it goes about its plot is pretty clever. So at first, the game gets you into this whole ranking battle system where you start at the lowest rank of it, rank Z, and then it makes a whole spiel about how you need to climb your way up to rank A. So you go around and battle a bunch of trainers and qualify for a rank up battle, and then when you do one, you jump to the next rank, and then you fight all the other members of that rank. But then, for some reason, at one point in the game, you just jump up a bunch of ranks, and I thought it was weird at first. In fact, I still kind of think it's weird. Like, why have the player start at rank Z if you're just gonna skip half of them? I guess it's for world building. Okay, whatever, weird. But then for those final ranks, they're kind of treated like anime arcs. For each of the final ranks, it's almost a whole self-contained story for each of the people that you need to battle in order to rank up. So instead of battling some sort of generic character for a rank up battle or hearing about some sort of gym leader, seeing them for a minute, battling them, and then never seeing them again, these are more established characters who form some sort of connection with you, both good and bad. And it works because, okay, so the game has multiple plot lines going on at the same time. You're a newbie in Lumiose City and you've joined this hotel staff to help bring guests to its location, but you're also trying to establish yourself as a powerful trainer by climbing your way up through this ranking system, but you're also tracking down rogue mega Pokemon and are protecting the city from their havoc. Then there are all these other plot points and other characters that get involved, and sometimes you derail from the other plot points that I just mentioned, and you can do a lot of these things and plots in various orders, and it's kind of a lot. And at first, there are some plot points like you have to track down where your next rank up battle opponent is, or you have to help them with something before you can even battle them, and you know, it's fairly straightforward stuff, and at times it admittedly feels like extra padding. But then there's this new plot point with this so-called bad guy that I mentioned earlier, but then I resolved that plot point, and then he says something to the effect of, okay, now that that's over, let me get to the real reason I called you here. And then it turns out he's my next rank up battle opponent, and he just kind of smirks, and that's when I was like, okay, now I understand what the game's trying to do, and this is kind of cool. And it's like all the plot points are intertwining, and it's just really clever. And then you beat him, and he's not really angry at you or sad that he lost. He's actually pretty relaxed. He just wishes he had an opportunity to show his Pokemon more. And I just think that that's so much more interesting than what Pokemon games have presented in the past. It's really interesting to see these plot points converge, and it feels so natural. And again, going back to the anime arc metaphor, it feels kind of rewarding to defeat these characters and see how things develop before and afterward. Also, I want to mention real quickly how I love that you can actually talk smack to your opponents before you battle them. That's really fun. Then there's this game's biggest selling point, the introduction of new Mega Evolutions. Now, the game is still new, so I shan't be showing any of the ones that weren't already revealed in pre-release material. With that in mind, I actually had a fair deal of these new Megas spoiled to me simply by the nature of having to work on IGN's footage in order to edit some of their guides and videos. I appreciate that a lot of these Pokemon received Mega Evolutions, especially since a fair deal of them are Pokemon that I've been using in competitive play for the past decade. And for me, it was sort of neat working in reverse. So because I had to work with IGN's footage and everything basically got spoiled to me, for the most part, I knew which Megas would be in the game. So I was trying to guess when they'd appear and which characters would use them. So when I would see a character Mega Evolve one, I'd go, oh cool, there it is. However, there was one Mega Pokemon that wasn't spoiled to me. I just didn't see it in IGN's footage, I guess. And while it's not a Pokemon to which I'm personally attached, I was pleasantly surprised when I saw it. Without getting into too many details or spoilers, each main character has an ace Pokemon that serves as their Mega Pokemon. Some of them are Mega Pokemon that were introduced in the past, and others are Mega Pokemon that are newly introduced to this game. Then beyond that, there are some Mega Pokemon that you battle during rogue battles. And these are cool because they kind of feel like boss battles that you'd see in a platformer game or something. It's a pretty interesting concept for a Pokemon game to execute, and it works well with the battle system here. Regardless, there's not really overlap between the two. That is to say, if you're fighting one of these Mega Pokemon during a rogue battle, let's say it's a Mega Mawile, then someone's signature Pokemon later on won't be a Mega Mawile. It'll be a different Mega Pokemon. So, at one point of the game, I'm fighting a character that specializes in Fairy-type Pokemon, and I was thinking to myself, what's your ace gonna be? It's gotta gotta be some sort of mega fairy Pokemon, right? Well, it won't be Mawile because I just fought that rogue one. Same thing with Altaria. I fought a rogue one of those, she wouldn't have a Mega Altaria, so what are the other fairy type megas? Then I saw her send out a Gardevoir and I was like, oh yeah, right, Doi, yeah, Mega Gardevoir, that makes sense, I haven't seen one yet. But then she didn't Mega Evolve it, and I forgot that she still had one Pokemon left. So then I kept thinking, well, okay, what other fairy type megas are there? I just don't remember. And then she sent out her last Pokemon and Mega Evolved, and I was like, oh, I haven't seen that one yet, ah! And I can only imagine the surprise that others must have felt seeing these new Mega Pokemon for the first time. Oh, and the music. The music! Okay, this game's soundtrack slaps. My favorite song in the game is the one that plays against the fairy girl that I mentioned earlier, and also this game's soundtrack is so diverse and flavorful. Pokemon games have generally been pretty good about music, and they've contained all sorts of genres of songs in the past. Whatever type of song they need, they go and have it. And yet, I find myself listening to ZA's soundtrack constantly. Again, it could just be because it's new. But to go back to Legends Arceus again, that game's soundtrack is pretty good too, but it's specifically made for that style of game. The songs work better in the context of the game than on their own. Because the game takes place in the past, the soundtrack is made to sound a bit more basic, for the lack of a better word. Sorry, I'm not a musician, so I don't really know musical terms all that well. But I know what music I do like, and I often listen to video game soundtracks outside of their respective games. I don't really find myself listening to any more than one or two songs from Legends Arceus in isolation, as I thought that the songs really only worked when playing the game, especially since the majority of the songs were similar in theme and instrumentation. But Legends ZA? Nah, this soundtrack is all over the place. And that's a good thing. It's got these sort of jazzy blues type beats for the overworld with that saxophone beautifully playing along with the rest of the melody. Shoutouts and congrats to my friend Insane in the Rain for working on the game's soundtrack. But then it's also got this traditional fast-paced, upbeat sort of rock and roll battle music that we've all come to know and love. And then there's like a chiptune shiprock song for one of the characters, and it's kind of a banger. And then of course there's the electro swing song for the fairy girl that I keep bringing up, and I just remember how that song perfectly synchronized to when I bore witness to that unspoiled Mega Pokemon, and just, man, this soundtrack is absolutely stellar. I love it. Love it, love it, love it. Yeah, this game is cool, man. I'm really digging it. Now, in the past, I did create a video on Pokemon Legends Arceus where I claimed that I enjoyed that more than Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. And even though Zelda is more fresh in my mind because of its sequel, Tears of the Kingdom's more recent release, I think that this comment is still overall true. The main thing I most relished from the Switch open world Zelda titles was all of the puzzle solving, so things like the shrines and the main dungeons were parts that I thoroughly enjoyed. But there's so much other stuff in the Zelda titles, and while that certainly makes them much grander in scale and content, there are things that don't really compel me to ever replay them. I don't know, I already recorded 100 plus videos for each game on my channel, and the idea of revisiting those games scares me. I think I've had my fill. But Legends ZA? Well, I can comfortably say that I enjoy it more than Legends Arceus, so wouldn't that technically mean that I enjoy it more than the Zelda titles as well? Yeah, I guess so. I can definitely see myself coming back to this game and replaying it, and I'll forever cherish the memories that I had during my initial playthrough and the unique experience that I had while playing this game after having many aspects spoiled to me, but the one thing that didn't get spoiled to me will serve as a unique, fond moment. So, by all this logic, Pokemon Legends EA is my favorite Pokemon game on the Switch, and therefore it's technically my favorite game on the Switch as a whole, excluding the remake of Paper Mario: The Thousand Year Door, but that's primarily because it's a remake of one of my other already favorite video games. So it's already one of my favorite video games that got made better and then got put on the Switch. But if we're not counting remakes, then yes, Pokemon Legends EA is my favorite Nintendo Switch title, even though I primarily played it on the Nintendo Switch 2 edition. Overall, Pokemon Legends EA provides an experience that left me wonderfully surprised, and it left me wanting more. While I do wish that there was a whole world to explore beyond just Lumiose City, I think it's important to realize what I've been given and not what I want. And what I've been given is a truly unique and memorable experience. And I think that just locking the game to the city allowed the Pokemon Company to focus on and polish what they already had. And if we get future Legend-style games, I hope that they can follow in the footsteps that Legends EA created. I'll take any excuse to revisit an older region with a fresh, open-world, real-time battle system coat of paint. As an aside, I've been recording everything I've done in the game so far, including my initial reactions to some moments. Perhaps you'll see them on my main gameplay channel one day, but for now, I think very positively of Legends EA, and I felt the urge to compile and share my thoughts. This wound up being a Pokemon game that I didn't previously know I wanted, and it provided everything I could have wanted and so much more. Kudos to the Pokemon Company, and thank you for giving me a game where I can run around in a huge city with a Bayleaf. Really, this is all I ever really wanted. And so, we've reached the end of the video. If you enjoyed it, please click on the like button or leave a comment. Either of those actions would really help me out. And hey, in case you didn't know, I also actively post gameplay videos on my other channel, where you can see me record the footage that I used in this exact video. I play a variety of different games, and I constantly play with friends and other content creators, so there's constantly something to watch. Otherwise, thank you all again for your support, and I hope to see you all in the future.